The guidance I have is very clear. We all have this kind of inner guidance. That for me guides me. And the question is over, the only thing we have to do is to love. So there are all kinds of entities and societies. And of course, there are also aliens of these kinds. And some of these aliens are actually here to help us in our forthcoming transition from planet Earth.
Way of Will John.
Hans Wilhelm, thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to have you here. How you doing?
Very well. Thanks so much for inviting me, Will. I'm excited to be on your show and looking forward to our conversation.
Yes, as am well. And it's interesting because you are involved in an endeavor that has so many facets, and we could go down so many different rabbit holes. And I have a few questions, just in general to go through. But before we get there, maybe you just want to give us an understanding of who you are and what you've done. I see an enormous library behind you. What have you gained? Give us an idea of who you are.
Good. As you can hear, I was born in Germany. And as a young person, I always doubted the official teachings of the organized religion. It didn't make sense, speaking of a loving God, and I saw all the misery around me. So very soon I learned, studied various different spiritual paths. I started off with Edgar Cayce and then many others. And for the last 40 years, I have been following a teaching which comes from the absolute reality, from divine divinity, through Christ, through channeling of a woman as an emissary of light, Gabriele, here in Germany. And she has been giving this information for 50 years. And I compare these teachings with all the other many paths that I have done over the last, let's say, 60, 70 years. And nothing comes close to it. This path works for me. It is the most depth, the most clearest path I've ever seen. And also I could apply all that was given and saw the changes in my life, which is my convincing reason that this seems to be working for me. I was keeping it for myself. It's because I believe the spiritual path is a very personal path for everyone. It was only when my father died and he was not believing in life after death. He was a soldier in the Second World War. And but I was with him in the last few days, and it says, look, Dad, in case your life continues after death, let me tell you sort of 10 things which probably will happen so that you're not surprised waking up on the other side. And he sort of smiled, and then a few days, and he knew he was, for him, it was nonsense. And then he died. It was 5 years or 4 years later, unexpectedly, in a bookstore, a stranger comes up to me and introduced himself as a medium. And he says, I saw you coming into the store, and when you came in, your father came to me right away and says, go to this man and tell him thank you for whatever he told me before I died, because whatever he has said came true and was right, and I did not believe him. And now I'm working at the receiving end of souls that have died, and I see the utter confusion of people who died. They don't even know that they're dead, many of them, and what happens to them next. Would I please write books about it and share that with a wider audience? Now, I'm an author and illustrator as my profession, and I've done over 200 books. But I was not going to make another spiritual book because spiritual books don't really sell so well unless you're a famous name. So I decided to reach young people. And at that time, it was YouTube. So I created YouTube channels where I used my talents, my drawing talents, and where I show very simple of how things work. Like, for instance, here with karma, if somebody does something bad to someone else, it's recorded in their soul, in the Akashic records, in the planets, and eventually comes back. When you see that visually, it becomes so much clearer. And it helped me also to understand all these spiritual laws. And I started that something like 16 years ago with the first videos. And every month I add new ones. And it has become a very powerful channel. And people find it very helpful. The important thing is to what I want to add here is that I have zero interest to change anybody's mind. I am not a missionary. I don't want to convince anybody. I merely share my own understanding. If it works for someone else, great. If it doesn't work for them, also great. So there is no pressure from my side. Neither do I have advertisements on my channel. Neither do I ask for money. This is totally self-generated kind of work, which I do as a work of love for those who are interested. And that's
Beautiful.
basically background story, that I just share my
Wow.
understanding with others. And as I work on these videos, find more understanding myself in them. So I'm serving myself and anybody who finds that these videos helpful. So these videos are on lifeexplained.com, which is the website, or if you just go to to YouTube and you punch in my name, Hans Wilhelm, and there you will immediately find the channel and go and find out which topic interests you, because I cover a lot of topics. That's in a nutshell, Will.
Yeah, and there's a lot within that. I mean, you've done a great job and made it quite concise. And before we even get into your understanding of the nature of reality and things that I think would help people, could you, since Edgar Cayce was a bit of a catalyst for you, could you talk about who Edgar Cayce is and what that did for you and what sort of truths or things you drew from him?
Well, the most important thing, when I grew up in Germany, we never spoke or even mentioned the word in a reincarnation. And when I came into contact with Edgar Cayce and also learned for the first time that Christ was teaching reincarnation in his time and in his teachings, I suddenly, for me, everything made sense. I suddenly understood why there were people suffering, why they're happy, why they're rich, why they're poor, illnesses, and all the things before for which I could never understand. There would be a loving God who would allow all these horrible things happening here on planet Earth. Suddenly, with reincarnation and karma, for me, everything makes sense. So that was the most important thing which I learned to Edgar Cayce. Now, Edgar Cayce has wonderful material which he read from the Akashic records. They are unfortunately not easy to read. Where anybody who has read Edgar Cayce books, you have to read the sentence 3 times before you really know what he means. And the information I'm receiving now via Gabi are in clear, simple terms, which that's why I enjoy it so much, because God says over and over again, I'm in genius simplicity. Well, it is always the organized religion which makes things often so difficult. But reality is actually very simple, and there is nothing hidden. We can all understand it with our limited mind even.
Club Libertas, the elite private membership club for the modern mystic, exploring powerful teachings on spirituality, self-awareness, ancient wisdom, a deep dive into meditation, mindfulness, and transformational practices designed for those ready to lead their own journey. Are you ready to step up?
Have you then now, considering that I think, and I agree, that simplicity is one of the greatest ways, obviously, for us to convey. I mean, we have symbols coming back from ancient civilizations, of course, and they're quite simple and they never change. The meanings never change. Our languages change, our words change, the meaning of our words change, but the symbols, once it's put there and put properly, it transcends time. And so, with that in mind, could you give us a coherent understanding of the nature of reality to your degree and in your understanding of what are we doing here? Why am I on Earth? Why did I come here? What am I supposed to do with this place? You know, like, could you give me some understanding of what in God's name we're all running around here for?
I can share my understanding. Yes, I'm
That's
happy to
good.
do that. Um, Well, we by nature, we are all perfect beings, spirit beings. We are all created in the image of God, so we are angelic beings. But a long time ago, what we call the fall, a number of these angelic beings have left the highest seven-dimensional reality and removed themselves from it because they acted against the law of love, because they became egocentric, self-centered. And that caused this fall of angels, so to speak, which some say is a third of all the spiritual beings at that time, which left the absolute reality. And we created what is called karma. Every time we acted against or thought and spoke against the law of love, we created a negative vibration. And that negative vibration has to be dissolved. It has to be undone. The karma comes back to us as an experience so that we experience what we have once done to other people or to the other animal world or to anybody else. So karma is not a punishment. Karma is merely a teaching tool so that we return back to love. Now, we are living in various spirit beings in many different levels of spiritual realms, according to our frequency, according to our consciousness. Very low conscious evolved beings are very low, higher evolved ones are higher, and we have the opportunity through our free will to move ourselves up again to the higher regions until we return back home. This, by the way, is the story of Jesus, the prodigal son who left his home. The father let him go and he sort of got lost in the world and then eventually returns back to the Father. This is our life, basically. So to speed up evolution, to speed up our cleansing of our karma, we are all given the opportunity to incarnate to planet Earth for a very short time, an average of 24,000 days. It's a very short visit. Here on planet Earth, we have got several advantages which we do not have in the spiritual world, realms, and the fall worlds. We here have got the opportunity to meet other souls with whom we may have karmic connections, and also be higher and lower evolved, because in the spiritual realms, that works on like attracts like. We are always surrounded by like-minded vibrating beings, like our souls, like ourselves. But here on planet Earth, our neighbor can be fanatic believer, the other one can be a freedom thinker, etc. Everything is possible, so we can learn so much from each other. We can also interact with souls with whom we may have karmic connections from previous lifetimes, so we can solve it. So what happens in our day-to-day life? As I said earlier very briefly, whenever we do something negative, it is loaded into the planets. The planets are the story. It's basically our causal computer. It stores all our karma, all our negative thinking, speaking, acting. And when we are on planet Earth, these vibrations coming back to us as karma, as a blow of fate, as an illness, as war, whatever it may be. But before they come back to hit us, we are always given some sense of inner knowing, some sense of, well, watch out, be careful. If I change now, I may not have to face my karma. For instance, very simple, if I smoked all the time and suddenly start coughing, I may want to take this as a symptom of not smoke anymore before otherwise I get lung cancer. And the same is with everything else. Whenever we got a funny, squeezy feeling, hey, what's this one here? Look at it. If our soul is speaking to us, look at it, something is coming up here. And so we can undo our karma beforehand. And that's the reason why we are here, because here we can forgive each other. The forgiveness, 70 times, 70 times, Christ said, is the most important thing. Forgiving each other and all the karma, all the pain and suffering we have done onto each other. And if that is not possible, we may have expiated, we have to feel it. And this can be in an illness, and illness flows through us. An illness is nothing than a relief of karma. Something flows through us. And that, in a nutshell, is our reason here on planet Earth, that we experience the karma and also speed it all up. So that when we return, hopefully we have cleared up a lot of karma, some of them all the karma, so that after our death we return back to a higher spiritual realm to eventually return to the absolute reality. So our life here on planet Earth is a tremendous gift and opportunity. And every being here on planet Earth has agreed to be here. Even those who hate their life can't believe that they ever agreed to this. We all did agree. Nobody is here against their free will. So at one time, because before we incarnate, we are shown more or less everything that will come to us, all the negative things, or the karma we may have to face. And we know this, and we say a clear yes to it, and then we incarnate. Because from a perspective of the spiritual world, those 24,000 days are very, very short, just like a blink of an eye, because life up there in the spiritual world is very different. And so we just, like for us, like here, going to the movie for an hour and a half and then come home. That as short as we perceive it. So we are willingly agree to this life here. And of course, when we are here, we forget that. We forgot that we have agreed to this. We forgot all the negativity that we have once done to other people in previous lifetimes, which may now come back to us. We have forgotten all these things because we now must learn to develop our love muscle. We now must understand that the only way to solve all these things is through love and nothing else. Love means forgiveness, something enduring it, whatever it could be, in compassion. So that has to develop in each one of us and on our own accord, and we free ourselves through our own free will by applying these laws. And the laws were very easy given to us. They are the 10 Commandments, they are the Sermon on the Mount, and the Golden Rule. So there is no secret here. We all know these things, basically know about it. We may not be able to repeat them here from our mind, but we all know what they mean and what they stand for. And that is basically the reason why we are here, in a nutshell.
You spoke about an inner knowing as well, which is, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, of course, heavily related to our intuition. And I've had experiences of this inner knowing in my life, and I'm curious for someone who has looked into this and devoted so much time to it. Would you say, or do you have any methods, or do you recommend anything for anyone to harness, hone, or build up their understanding of their inner knowing, or their intuition? Do you have any practices? Do you recommend anything? Do you recommend people read anything, or is it just simply paying attention to it?
Our life is so busy that paying attention to it usually doesn't work because we are so involved in all these kind of things, whatever it distracts us all the time. So the best practical practice which I have discovered is to make a daily reflection in the evening about how my day was, what I did. I can also do it twice. It's very recommended to do it in noontime as well, and have another review of my day in the evening. And when we have this review of our day, then everything will come back to us what needs to be cleared up. So in other words, it's half a meditation. I'm looking down, what have I done? What is today? What kind of emotions come up in me? What wants to be make itself aware in my conscious mind? On going within is actually the word, and there I find the answers. I find all the answers in my life. So the answer to your question is we have to give our soul opportunity to communicate with us. And that we can do when we consciously make a day's review at the end of a day, and maybe even twice a day if we are lucky to have a lunchtime and break and reflect, how did my morning go? Did I upset anybody? Why am I upset if somebody else did something to me? And what is the reflection? What is my feedback? What can I learn from it? So it's basically the willingness to sit down and look back on your last 5 hours or 12 hours of the day.
Uh, do you ever, and this is going back to Cayce, the just to a certain degree, but the Akashic records is one of those things that has just been it's so fascinating. I mean, the idea we should probably explain, and you would do a fantastic job as opposed to what I would say of it. But maybe you could explain just also essentially what the Akashic records is, and people claim to be able to access them and access knowledge and access all sorts of things behind that. What do you think to that degree?
Well, my understanding of the Akashic record, it's the same thing like you and I have. We all have an aura. It is the aura of the planet Earth. And in the aura, we are basically, the aura reflects who we are very clearly, all our thinking, our speaking, our action. And that is in our aura. And the same is when the world aura, which is the Akashic records, that everything that has happened on planet Earth is recorded in that aura and is seen in that aura and can be perceived in that aura. Now, there are people like Edgar Cayce who can read the Akashic records, and many other people claim they can do that too. I cannot do that, and I have no skill. Neither have I really interest in doing it, because I'm still working on my own, forget about the world, and my own aura. But yes, the aura, the Akashic records is something which records everything what has happened on planet Earth, all the beliefs, all the wars, etc., etc. So that's in a nutshell. But I cannot read it. Others claim they can.
So what I also found fascinating about all of this, and also just your work in general, and how how expansive everything is. Uh, how do you know what guides you? This is just a small tangent in some degree, but are you guided by trying to better yourself? Are you guided by simply your interests? What is guiding you, and how do you go deeper into this study? Because it's so fantastic. And like you said, I think you said 40 years that you've been kind of down this journey. Like, what is guiding you day by day in order to push further towards the next nugget of knowledge that you have?
My guidance is my inner reaction, which my inner intuition feeling that I'm feel from moment to moment. If I do something unloving, I speak unloving, immediately it will reflect myself being an uneasy feeling. So the guidance I have, of course, it can come from my guardian spirit, from Christ, from God. All this may be very well true, but I have got a very direct connection to my body. If I listen to my body, my soul, my intuition tells me right away that what you just did isn't right. And what you're going to
And
do right now isn't right. I know it beforehand. So the guidance I have is very clear. We all have this kind of inner guidance, the inner voice, or whatever you may call that. So that for me guides me. And the question is always, the only thing we have to do is to love. And whenever I do something which is not loving, or which is maybe to build up my ego and so on, then immediately I feel not quite comfortable with it. Now, sometimes I do it anyway just to get the ego kick. But after which I realize this was a pretty stupid decision. So yes, sometimes I break my own laws, because there is this drive that I'm still very human. I'm not walking on water yet unless it's frozen. So I am still falling for my own kind of weaknesses at times. But I very quickly realized that this was really stupid to do. And this is basically where in the Bible they call it sin. But what is sin? Sin is basically ignorance. Ignorance that we do something, we are ignorant of that we have done something against our own higher self, and own higher good. That's basically what we do, because sometimes we just act stupidly.
TheWayOfWillJohn.com. Exclusive content and programs on manifestation, making money, hidden knowledge. Finally, reach your full potential.
And I'm trying to remember the definition of sin by one of my favorite metaphysicians, which is Neville Goddard. Neville Goddard, and I believe he said it is missing the mark. I believe
Yeah,
that the Hebrew, definition of it was missing the mark.
yeah,
And the way he equates it is essentially kind of like you have this guiding principle, you have a guiding force, right? If you're doing something correct, you don't feel to be sinning. You feel good, correct. You feel on path, on point. And when you start going off of that path, you're missing the mark. Something in internal, something in you tells you you're missing the mark. And of course, free will, whether we have it or not, at least it would appear that we can choose to continue missing the mark, or we can continue to, go down a better path. And so I find that, incredible. What I was going to ask is kind of one that has to do with society just right now and in general. And you spoke about the complexities of religion and how organized religion tends to overcomplicate divinity and, let's say, the clergy's relationship to God. Do you look at the current state of our world right now, and does it give you some sort of hope? Are you hoping that we take a turn left and move away from some of the ideas and things that were going on? How do you see the world today?
Organized religion is, of course, I would say, for the most part, a demonic kind of entity, because we know most of the wars in the world came from religions. And why? Because the religions are also always run by males. It's male energy. They made very sure that the woman was actually regarded second class, which is totally against divinity, where the male and the female are absolutely equal. So the first thing they did when they fell upon spirit from the highest realm is to make sure that the women are play objects to serve men, and just not to be regarded as equal at all. So all the structures in our societies, may it be religion, may it military, may it government, may it companies, etc., are for the most part male-oriented, and the woman has no chance. If the woman had a chance, we wouldn't be in such misery. And the organized religion has really caused a lot of it, because they have really distorted the view of God. The Abrahamic kind of religions, which is a Christianity, Hebrew, and Muslim, are all speaking of a very nasty God, a revengeful God, and so on, who kills people, etc. None of this is true. This is done all written by human beings and made up, and they are not teaching the law of love in these things. And when we see what the religions have done and how they control the people and so on, there is not much love in there. So I would be very careful. Now, There are people who like their religion, who like to go to church because they love the community. They also love to serve. They do soup kitchens and things like this. This is all fine. It's all great if it helps and if you feel good this way. But the rulers of the religions, in all the religions basically, are not divinely inspired. They claim so, but they are not, because they are usually they want to bind you. They want to bind you to the system. And if you're there with christening and all this kind of stuff, the ceremonies and rituals, I've got a very interesting video on rituals and ceremonies. And that is all binding stuff. And they go back to the past, whilst God or Christ teach the path of freedom. Let go of the old stuff. Move forward, let go, let go. Everything, all these things bind you to planet Earth. And whatever we feel strongly believe in, particularly in religion, if we strongly believe in a specific religion, that means we most likely also will, when after our death, will come into a spiritual realm where with souls of similar belief system and incarnate back into the same religion over and over again. The cycle doesn't get broken because we are so tight to the worldly belief of a certain religion. So it's a very binding thing, and all the religions basically want to bind you to them and don't set you free. And therefore the word of reincarnation, the teaching of reincarnation, for instance, was taken out in the Christian church, because it is a wonderful binding tool when you know that the only way to God is through the church, through the Catholic Church or other church, Lutheran Church, and not through your own way of dissolving your own karma. That's the only way how you can set yourself free, through forgiveness and through love. So I've got I'm very critical. Now, you asked me earlier about how do I see the world. The world, as I see, with all the wars going on, it's dreadful. But these are birthing pains of a new world. All wars are basically karmic related, which means horrible stuff happens to people who once have most likely also done horrible stuff. This is not a judgment, this is an observation, because there only in certain areas are wars and the other areas are not. And everything what we receive in life, there are no accidents. So if I am really hit through illness, war, to torture, etc., there is something in me which is the past, which is related to the past. So all this has to be cleansed for the earth to come into a higher vibration. So right now we are going through a phase of cleansing, and cleansing is painful. And therefore, from my ego present life, I'm very upset what happens in the world, because I don't want all these wars. From my highest perspective, I say, all this has to take place, or you have to allow it. If there's anything you can stop it in our limited way, we go and stop it. We always must help others. But it is a natural cleansing of the planet Earth, because the planet Earth itself has been ravished and polluted and raped for hundreds of years. And even the Earth is now, which is a living entity, is sort of saying, I had enough of this humankind. And it brings us all these disasters from storms and waters and fires and so on. All of this is cleansing, cleansing, cleansing.
What you say there just reminds me of, and I know on your website you have a section on the law of attraction, kind of the secret and things like this. And I can recall, I believe the author's name is Rhonda Byrne of The Secret. And I believe also that she potentially was in hot water, let's say, in the media, because she mentioned something very similar to your thoughts here as well, which was hard. She didn't preface it, and she didn't have the same tactfulness that you just did, but essentially stating, I think, that if in some degree, if bad things are happening to you, or if you find yourself in this, she didn't go on to talk about karma and things like that. I think she basically just said, well, she might have maybe misspoken, or they may have misquoted her and just like, well, you're bad. Right. And of course that's people go crazy when they hear stuff like that. And I'm sure she didn't mean it in the sense way, or at least I assume that she didn't mean it in that way, but it is in general already a hard thing for most people to deal with, the fact, because, we live in a time still with the materialist worldview being the dominant one for the most part, even though it seems to be shifting, and that science and metaphysics are kind of starting to blend back and kind of be friends a little bit. where we feel that we have no control and no understanding of what's happening from the cosmos to what's here. There's so much for us to learn. There's so much we act like we know a bit because of our technological advancements, but we don't really know anything, and we rest in that. And then here come people like you who have studied these things and understand these things for a long period of time, and they say, well, no, you have an ability to affect things. Your actions, your thoughts, your intention are all affecting, and potentially, if you obviously believe in reincarnation, what you were doing in the past is affecting you now, right? And so on one hand, I see a group of people who find empowerment through that, and in another group, I see people being like, well, that's not fair. Wait a second, like I did that whatever back then, or I don't remember that, and all this stuff. And I see this juxtaposition of people trying to conjure up ways to either avoid karma, or ignore the power that they kind of have in their head. And so I wanted to make a shift now to get your understanding, and because I haven't watched the videos on law of attraction, or I think The Secret. I think you have a video entitled "Why the Secret Didn't Work," something along these lines. Maybe if you remember it. But could you kind of get into that? It takes us down the manifestation route, but what's your understanding there?
Yeah, let me just before I do that, I want to clarify something. When we see people suffering, like in a war situation, and I said sort of rather quickly, it says it's karma coming back. This is not the case for anybody, for everybody there. People incarnate in war scenes also to help and assist other souls. So it's not never, ever, ever up to us to judge another person why they are in a very shitty situation. That is only between that soul and divinity. We are only asked to help if we can and serve. That is our only thing. So I'm not making a judgment of the people who are in a very dire situation. I'm only observing that the majority is reaping their karma, but there are many other people who are actually incarnating to serve, sort of like angels and like nurses and doctors and so on. So we are not up here to judge other people, and I wouldn't call anybody bad because he has had terrible karma. So that's I want to clarify. With regard of the law of attraction, the law of attraction is true. The like attracts like. If we are having a certain vibration, then we are also automatically attracted to souls or situations of same vibration. That is how the whole universe law works. But if we are sitting here at home and suddenly decide, oh, I would like this luxury villa on the beach, and I want a Rolls Royce, and I want to have lots of money, and I sit here and think deeply, I want to have that, I'm imagining I have it, and many thousands of people have done it after reading the book, and it hasn't materialized. Why? Because our soul is still, our soul calling, our true reason for this life is still stronger, and our soul wouldn't really allow it in most cases. For some people, they can do that and they can have achieved it. But our soul knows we are here for a very different reason, because we are here maybe to meet our mate somewhere in so let's say in Austin, Texas or whatever, and not somewhere on the beach. And that's where our life continues, maybe as a teacher somewhere there, but not as a rich person on the beach. Our soul overrides all these kind of deep longings which come from our ego for our own self. Because imagine, and I give the example of an actor who is playing a sick person every night intensely, really, and puts all his energy in being a sick person for months and months and months. That person doesn't get sick, even if he continuously imagines being sick. So our soul has some influence on what we wish. And I also like to mention, when we have got these very earthly desires like wealth, fame, power, and it can be also more specific, certain kind of people or certain kind of environment, all these are anchors that we throw into the future. And these anchors can pull us back into another reincarnation. And that's where the problem is, with all these kind of having these strong wishes and desires and putting them into the future, instead of facing what comes up right now to me. That's important. What I basically, my purpose in life is to deal whatever comes up with me right now in this moment. Right now I'm having a conversation with you. That is all which matters. And when I'm done with this one, something else will be right in front of me. That's what we are here to solve in the most loving and compassionate fashion. Having our big dreams and often come from our ego, and our ego pulls us back with these things. So there is a danger in projecting these immense, powerful dreams because they all mostly come from our ego. Even if I want to invent something great, I want to help millions of people. That's an ego wish. And so we have to be careful with our ego and bind ourselves with our ego. Whilst in truth, we are here to deal whatever is in front of us in this very moment. Live the moment, the power of now, Edgar. So that's where the answer is, and that's where we find our solution to all our problems now and for the future. Does it answer your question, Will?
Completely, completely. It makes me. It brings up another thought in my head, though. Also from some of your videos that I saw on guardian angels, which it may not necessarily link to this, but our higher selves. Then it kind of makes me wonder how we are. And I asked you what was kind of guiding you, and you basically have linked it once again to the present, to the now, and you dealing with what's in front of you. But how are we to, in essence, as you're saying, the soul knows best, or you could equate the soul in some degrees to your higher self. How are we to equate then what our spiritual, what our best, how do we create, how do we understand our higher self? How do we understand what it is? If the soul is wanting us, wouldn't it make sense for us to be in alignment with what the soul wants rather than what our ego wants? And so are we not then in an internal search and run to kind of have ego deaths every second in order for me to connect with my upper and higher self? Or how do I equate these two things?
Well, first of all, I think it is helpful to believe that we have a higher self and a higher purpose and a higher soul. Many people do not believe it. They only believe this is a one lifetime we are having here, and I want to get the biggest piece of the pie. That is usually how we are brought up in a capitalistic society, particularly. So they are going and following and give their biggest piece of the pie because they find it's natural. They are not even aware that there's an ego and stuff like that. They only learn it through pain. When they have given sufficient pain to others, the pain will come back to them, and they may then wake up. But our higher self or our ego, our higher self or our, how shall I say, our divine part in us is always there. We always have the connection to divinity, to God, because the kingdom of God is in us. It's not up there somewhere, it's in us. Christ said it very clearly. Everything is in us. God is in us. The entire creation is in us. The entire creation is in the smallest, and the smallest is in the largest. I think this holographic, I made a video on this one, is very clear. So we have not only the power of divinity in us, we have got all of creation in us. We have got all the God in us. And through that, we can work on a different level when we understand that the only thing we have to do here is to love, nothing else. Everything else is not important. The only thing to do is love, to do our actions and our words and choose our words and actions from that basis, from love and compassion. That's the only thing we have to do. And really, that it means often forgiveness, making amends, and serving those who are less fortunate. So it's very, very simple. And when we do this, we won't have these nagging feelings, these negative feelings. We will be actually feel joyful. We find this bliss. Many people who are like just Doctors Without Borders and people who are really dedicate their whole life to help other people, they have an inner sense of purpose, which is so great, so full, so powerful, what most of us can only dream about, because most of us do not feel that their job and their existence is any much meaning. So we can put meaning into our own life from moment to moment when we really come from love only. The moment we do this, our guardian spirit actually sends through the connection, they have got a connection to us, a form of joy. We feel this joy in us if something works very well. And so they applaud us and says, yes, this is it. This is what you are here to do. This is your purpose. We often sometimes find it when we see somebody doing some wonderful work, and like in a movie and so on. We see a movie of Mother Teresa or something like this, and then suddenly we choke up. We suddenly get tears. That's a symbol that's a sign from our guardian spirit. Says, yes, that's your path. Not exactly copying that, but that's the idea behind this. That's why you're here. And so we are continuously reminded through our own emotions, the positive emotions, where our path could be.
With the talk and the understanding and the clarity that love is our, let's say, in our best interest, Have you ever done any digging or contemplating on duality? Because one of the biggest things that's going on in, I would say, the what's in the zeitgeist right now is the horrid acts, so not just of war, but also, let's say, the deep state, and there's stuff being talked about with human trafficking and certain things that are happening with this. How do you equate, let's say, the success or the I guess I just have to call it success. The success of the dual or potentially opposite, and I'm not sure if evil and hate, I guess, are the perfect opposite to love. But how do we equate those actions being successful within our world? Is there a necessity of this, or is there a duality, or is duality only illusion while we're down here? Is it just the karmic world working itself out? How do you understand that?
Well, I covered in many of my videos. This is my understanding, and I'm just offering it only here and don't not convince anybody. The reason why Satana left the absolute reality was because she wanted to create her own creation. Satana later became Satan or Lucifer in our mythology, in our story. She wanted to have their own creation, which meant she firstly had to destroy God's creation. So out of this comes the desire of destruction. That's what created also the fall. And all the things you just mentioned, the human trafficking, war, and so on, etc., deep state, etc., are all energies for the purpose of destructions. And the destruction comes usually, and it is led by negative entities, which are sort of demons, who are really inspiring people here on this planet Earth to do their destructive work for them. Why do they do that? Because every time we have a war, a battle, destruction, suffering, pain, cries, it creates louche energy, negative energy. And that louche energy is the energy these demons are living off. That's why all these wars we are having, they're instigated often by these negative entities, because a theater of war where all the people are dying and fear, etc., is enormous harvest for them of louche energy. And so they're living off it. Now, who are these demons? These demons are none other than brothers and sisters from the absolute reality, like ourselves, who have fallen so deeply that they have no more any energy in them left. And the only way for them to survive in the spiritual realm is to steal energy from each other and from us human beings. And we can easily be misled in giving them because they can project themselves with thoughts into our head and says, I must do this, I must do this. And whenever we do something negative, they use our energy, and that's their life force. So the whole thing has a very purpose. I've got my latest video is how the fallen angels changed the law of God. It explains in great detail how the demonic world has created these laws and how they instill and how they involve people here in the world. So that is a very interesting subject you're touching on, and it's a very real subject. We are influenced by these negative entities who still want the destruction, and out of the destruction, they get their life force. So we have to be careful not to get involved with them.
Are you taking the term louche? Is that coming from Robert Monroe?
To tell the truth, I don't know the origin. It has been used in many things, but we all speak about the same thing. These are the energy,
Yeah.
the negative worker. I do not know exactly who created it first.
Okay. Well, you know what is fascinating is that his entire worldview uh, um, was one with which louche, this term, didn't and wasn't only, let's say, it wasn't only referring to love, or sorry, to hate or to just any sort of emotion. It was simply the emotion that we humans uh, give off. And so, I mean, I could be wrong here, but I mean, I'm kind of paraphrasing in a bit. It's just that we produce this. Love produces this energy, and it's not to say that negative entities are enjoying the destruction and death, decay, and all of the chaos that it's created, but that also positive entities uh, enjoyed this louche, this energy, and it was just something that we created. Now, his thought process behind that was a bit more, I don't want to say dystopian, but at least it was almost as if to say that the entities were farming us, good or bad. It was that we humans were creating this energy based off of, we get really happy, we create this sort of energy. We get really sad and destructive, we create this energy. And here it is. There are other entities in the higher spiritual realms that we're coming across and kind of picking up on that. And I find that interesting. I don't know, myself. I've had my own experiences, uh, all of which have not led me to any true understanding of the spiritual world. But I kind of wanted to touch on these entities because the way that you talk about them, for people who are also new to this and they're this far into the podcast, could you give just an understanding of what are these entities? Like, are these just the demons that they kind of heard about? Is they supposed to have watched a horror movie? Are they going to see any when they're, you know, when they're waking up? Like, how do we? Could you explain entities to someone who doesn't know?
Well, I touched on it briefly. It says they are also, like ourselves, divine spirit beings who have left the absolute reality, like you and I. Everybody is, but they have they created so much negativity over time that they have lost all their own energy, and they've fallen vibrationally so low that they don't have any more energy really to survive. And the only way to survive is to take energy from other people, from human beings mostly. Yeah, like you work farming in a way. Yes, that's how they keep alive. But they are our brothers and sisters. But they are very negative in their vibration, in their thinking, in their acting, and they do not wish to incarnate. As long as they can draw the energy from human beings, they are strong enough to resist the cycle of reincarnation. Because if they would reincarnate, if they incarnate into Earth, they would have to face their karma. And to stay out of this, they really use this energy from us here in negative cases, and to stay alive. So basically, they're our brothers and sisters. Yes, they have got lots of movies made about it, but it's all the same energy. It's all a destructive, demonic, satanic kind of entities, which comes in very various forms. They harvest us basically in many, many different forms. And we can protect ourselves by going a spiritual path and not falling victim to them. This is only one type of entity that can influence. There's also the earthbound entities. These are souls which have died and cling to planet Earth because they identify their life here on planet Earth. They also have very often certain vices like alcoholism, sex, drugs, and so on, which they cannot continue in the spiritual world because they no longer have the physical body. And they use human beings and cling to them. This is a spirit possession, measured in the neck area, and use the human being to continuously satisfy their old vices, make it alcohol, sex, etc. So these are another form of influences of negative entities. They don't use the Lush energy as such, but they use us directly through direct to spirit possession. And I've got several videos on spirit possession because it is far more prevalent than we might think.
And I'm going to assume that a way to avoid this is probably awareness, right? In my own, let's say, research in these sorts of subjects, I've found that generally what gets stated when someone has some form of this occurring to them, it's because they themselves have potentially engaged in some sort of behavior like this. They've started to become unaware. The alcoholism has struck them, and an entity understands, well, this is a perfect mark, right? Not the guy who never goes and to drink. So I do find that interesting. As
it is the law of cause and the law of like attracts like. Yes, you have to have something similar vibration in you to attract any of these entities. Yeah. That's very right. Very. I'm pleased you mentioned it.
Yeah. I find it fascinating just in and of itself. And I was kind of curious also because these entities and this whole this whole realm of spiritual beings. Have you ever gone down any of the paths of the Gnostics, of the Gnostic teachings as well? Because when I hear you say that organized religion, kind of chaotic, keeping us away from our divinity, Gnostics, everything is within. You don't need an organized religion. And I'm just curious if you were influenced at all, especially the Christian Gnostics, the Essenes, just considering that they were so prevalent around the time of Jesus and just before. Their teachings have lasted just an incredible mountain are kind of having a resurgence now. Did they have any influence on
Not,
what you're doing?
I'm aware of it. I'm sure that lots of my teachings are very much like the Gnostic, but I will not be able to say exactly what the difference is because I'm not an expert on the Gnostic beliefs, so I can't answer that. But the basic truth is probably the same or similar.
Very much so. Very much so. From the way that you've said it, it shares a whole lot of similarities. Uh, I'm curious. One other thing, because we've talked a lot about entities now, just getting that out there. But what about extraterrestrial? Have you ever gone down that route? Is there any understanding of aliens? Are
Yeah,
there aliens?
there is.
And that's
I have videos on that one as well. I'm not I'm not an expert in in them. There are a lot of people who claim wonderful expert in this, and that's fine. Yes, of course, there are spiritual. When we speak about the spiritual realms in the spirit, they are of different vibration. We are here on the material level, which is the lowest level of vibration, and so we go slowly up higher and higher. We come to societies in the spiritual realm, which are of much higher evolution than we are. And that means they have got different tools, they can different move around on spaceships, etc., until we finally reach to the absolute reality. So yes, there is of course so much room from our planet Earth up to absolute reality. Everything in between is possible. As Dolores Cannon said, everything is it's a very convoluted universe. And so there are all kinds of entities and societies there. And of course, there are also aliens of these kinds. And some of these aliens are actually here to help us in our forthcoming transition from planet Earth. We have got several societies who have dedicated their entire existence and life to help humankind to slowly progress or to progress to a higher kind of a level of vibration, or in another dimension, some may call it. And this could, because we could face some major drastic changes here on planet Earth that may cause them to intervene somehow with their spaceships. But I am not an expert of it. There are certain revelations which are also given through Gabi on this subject, but I have stayed away with it because I don't want to get into any discussions on alien too much because I'm sort of a novice in this field. But yes, the aliens are there. They're higher evolved. I am not afraid of lower evolved because to be able to travel around in space, time and spaceships, etc., you must have already a higher evolution than we have. And when you have a higher evolution, you wouldn't want to have anything what we can give them, really, basically. Why would they bother with us?
Sure. Uh, two more questions if you're good. Are you good
Yeah, yeah.
for a couple? All right. Uh, the first of this is you mentioned kind of a transition potentially that we might have from Earth. Are you referring to something that's cataclysmic or negative in that sense, or is there just an evolution or and a higher awakening of ours that allows us to then, I don't know, expand outside of our current setup?
Yes and no. The simple reason is here on planet Earth, we can look on the planet Earth and we see there are areas like in Gaza, in Israel, in Iran, etc., which are really in a horrible situation, Ukraine and so on. And there are other ones here on the East Coast in America. I'm living in a paradise right now. So right now we are having extreme opposites on planet Earth. And these extreme opposites will be going on for a long time. So there is a constant change, a constant unloading of karma. And it can be that many societies and a large group, more people, may come into difficult situation facing their own cleansing process, whilst others are not. So it's not a general term that says everybody has to go experience the same thing, because there may be others who don't have to face that karma. They are more here as someone who starts the new earth, as so to speak, who may be the new farmers, the new people who start the kingdom of God, whatever, the kingdom of Christ, with more loving kind of entities on a higher vibration than we presently are. So yes, there will be more destruction, horrible stuff happening. They may not affect everybody. They make maybe the majority, but it is not for everybody because everybody has a different kind of path. We all having here our very, very unique purpose in life and our very unique life.
And the last question is quite simple, or maybe you'll find it complex. But I'm hoping that it'll be quite simple for you. Books. I'm a huge reader. I enjoy reading. What sort of books, yours as well, what book would you recommend? The ones that you've written, and the ones that you would recommend to us in order to better understand the subject, as well as any books that helped you along your path. I mean, you mentioned Eckhart Tolle. I as well have definitely read The Power of Now. Great book. Recommend it to anyone to get any understanding. But what would you recommend?
Well, your question is answered on a special website which I created. All the books I recommend on my website life-explained.com. There are book recommendations. There are all the books which I'm basing my videos on, as well as from other authors who have helped me also to understand this. So there is a long list, and anybody interested goes to lifeexplained.com and look at these books, because and there are also the links directly to these books. I think they all go to Amazon. If you are interested in getting more information about these various books, there are wonderful people. I really like Byron Katie's work, with whom I did some books together with her, because she does it in this wonderful, simplistic way. And I just admire her technique. I admire her. And so I've done some books with her, and they're also on this list. But there are other people who have written wonderful books which can help us, and on all different subjects. So go to my website lifeexplained.com. On the books recommendation page, you find the whole list.
That is perfect. That is perfect, Hans. It's great. I wish we had more time, because there's plenty of other, like I said, rabbit holes that we could go down, and I'm sure we could get some detail out of it. We'll have to do it again. So you've obviously already said lifeexplained.com. We'll have the link to that right in the description box for everybody to check that out. So please do. And once again, I really appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, Will. It was a great honor and pleasure to be with you and to meet you personally. Maybe we meet again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Looking forward.